Welcome to WWWO Heroic Tales, where true stories of courage, sacrifice, and extraordinary heroism come alive from the darkest days of World War II. Join us as we uncover the untold moments that shaped history. January 1945. The war in Europe is in its final, brutal chapter. The massive German counteroffensive known as the Battle of the Bulge has been blunted, but the Wehrmacht is not yet broken. In the Alsace region of northeastern France, another desperate German gamble is underway: Operation Nordwind. Its objective is to smash through the thinly stretched lines of the American 7th Army, drive to the Rhine, and encircle and destroy Allied forces. At the heart of this maelstrom is a stubborn bulge in the German lines known as the Colmar Pocket. Here, near the Rhine River, German forces are clinging to a vital bridgehead, a dagger pointed at the Allied flank. For the Allies, reducing this pocket is a strategic necessity. For the Germans, holding it is a matter of survival. The landscape is a character in this drama, a frozen, unforgiving antagonist. The winter of 1944–45 is one of the coldest on record. Snow lies thick upon the fields and forests, muffling sound and concealing movement. The ground is frozen solid, making the digging of foxholes an agonizing, back-breaking task. Rivers are ice-choked, and the air is so cold it sears the lungs. For the soldiers of the U.S. 3rd Infantry Division, known as the Rock of the Marne, this is a special kind of hell. They have been fighting continuously since landing in North Africa in 1942, through Sicily, Italy, and now the forests of France. They are battle-hardened, but they are also weary, depleted, and fighting in conditions that test the limits of human endurance. This isn't a war of sweeping armored advances. It is a grim, close-quarters affair fought for every village, every patch of woods, every frozen ditch. The stakes are immense. If the Germans can reinforce the Colmar Pocket and break out, they could unravel the entire Allied front in the south, prolonging the war by months and costing countless more lives. It is against this backdrop of strategic desperation and brutal weather that one of the most remarkable acts of individual valor in military history is about to unfold. In the midst of this frozen battlefield stands a figure who seems almost out of place. Second Lieutenant Audie L. Murphy is just 20 years old, with a boyish face and a slight build that belies the warrior within. Standing at only 5 feet 5 inches tall, he was initially rejected by the Marines and the paratroopers for being underweight. But the Army saw something in the quiet Texan farm boy, and by January 1945, he had proven them right beyond any measure. Murphy is no stranger to the horrors of combat. He has fought his way across Europe, earning a battlefield commission from private to lieutenant. He has been wounded multiple times, has contracted malaria, and has seen more death and destruction than most men twice his age. His decorations already include the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, and 2 Bronze Stars. He is a quiet leader, not given to grand speeches, but his men follow him without question. They have seen his preternatural calm under fire, his tactical acumen, and his fierce determination to protect them. They trust him implicitly. His command, Company B of the 15th Infantry Regiment is a shadow of its former self. After relentless fighting, the company, which should have a strength of over 120 men, has been whittled down to just 19 combat-effective soldiers and 2 officers, including Murphy. They are exhausted, frostbitten, and low on supplies, but their morale holds, anchored by the quiet confidence of their young commander. Murphy himself is walking wounded. A recent mortar blast has left him with a lingering hip injury, causing a constant, nagging pain. By all rights, he could be in a rear-echelon hospital, but he refused to leave his men. His place, he believed, was at the front. This sense of duty, this unbreakable bond with the soldiers under his command, is the core of his character. It is the fuel that will soon drive him to perform an act that defies belief, an act born not from a desire for glory, but from a profound responsibility to the handful of men who look to him for survival in a world of ice and steel. The date is January 26, 1945. The location is a desolate stretch of open ground on the edge of the Holtzwihr woods, near the small French village of Holtzwihr. Audie Murphy and his 18 remaining men are occupying a forward position, a salient pushed out into enemy territory. Their line is dangerously exposed, a thin screen of foxholes in the snow-covered earth. The position is critical. It guards a key road into the woods, a vital artery for the American advance. If it falls, the Germans can sweep in behind the main American force, causing chaos and potentially rolling up the flank of the entire regiment. Supporting Murphy's beleaguered infantry are 2 M10 tank destroyers from the 636th Tank Destroyer Battalion. These vehicles are a welcome addition, providing much-needed firepower. The M10, based on the Sherman tank chassis, is armed with a potent 3-inch M7 gun, capable of knocking out most German armor. However, it is thinly armored and has an open-topped turret, leaving the crew dangerously vulnerable to artillery air bursts and infantry attacks. Its key feature is its 50 caliber Browning M12 machine gun mounted on the turret, a weapon renowned for its range, power, and psychological impact. As dawn breaks, a ghostly quiet settles over the battlefield. The sky is a flat, unforgiving gray. A biting wind sweeps across the open fields, driving particles of ice and snow. The men shiver in their foxholes, their breath pluming in the frigid air. They are tense, listening. They know the Germans are out there, gathering in the woods opposite their position. The silence is deceptive, a prelude to violence. Murphy moves along the line, checking on his men, offering a quiet word of encouragement. He checks his Moen carbine, ensures the bar gunners are in good positions, and confers with the tank destroyer commanders. Every man knows the odds are stacked against them. They are a tiny island of resistance in a sea of impending hostility. Their survival depends on their training, their discipline, and their faith in the small, quiet lieutenant who now stands with them, staring out into the gray emptiness, waiting for the storm to break. The silence is shattered not by a single shot, but by a deafening crescendo. A German artillery barrage erupts, the shells screaming down from the heavens. The world dissolves into a chaotic nightmare of sound and fury. Geysers of black earth and dirty snow leap into the air as high-explosive rounds crater the frozen ground. The deadly hiss of shrapnel tears through the air. The men of Company B press themselves into the bottom of their foxholes, praying the frozen earth will protect them. The bombardment is a classic German tactic, designed to soften up the defense, to stun and disorient the defenders before the main assault. Through the haze of smoke and falling snow, movement is spotted at the edge of the woods. First one, then two, then a half-dozen German tanks emerge from the tree line, their long-barreled cannons menacingly scanning the American position. They are supported by hundreds of infantrymen, clad in white winter camouflage, blending almost perfectly with the snow-covered landscape. They advance in disciplined waves, a tide of field gray and steel rolling across the open ground. This is the moment of truth. The two American M10 tank destroyers roar to life, their engines coughing in the cold air. They open fire, their 3-inch guns barking defiance. But they are outnumbered and outgunned. The German assault is overwhelming, a display of coordinated firepower and manpower. The American infantrymen open up with everything they have: carbines, bars, machine guns. But their small arms fire seems to have little effect on the advancing tide. The German tanks concentrate their fire on the M10s, the most significant threat. An armor-piercing shell screams past one of the destroyers. Another hits the second M10 with a sickening clang, the round striking the glacis plate and ricocheting away. The American line is beginning to crumble. Casualties mount. The sheer weight of the German attack is too much for the handful of defenders. It is a desperate, hopeless fight. Then disaster strikes. A direct hit from a German tank shell slams into one of the M10s. The impact is catastrophic. A bright orange flash is followed by a plume of thick, black smoke. The thinly armored vehicle is torn open, and flames begin to lick at its hull. The surviving crew members, stunned and wounded, scramble to bail out of the burning wreck, seeking cover from the relentless enemy fire. The loss of this vehicle is a critical blow. With one tank destroyer out of action and the other falling back, the fragile American defense is shattered. The German infantry, sensing victory, surges forward. For Murphy, a split-second decision must be made. To stay and fight would mean the certain annihilation of his entire company. His duty is to his men. Using a field telephone, he begins calling in artillery strikes on the advancing Germans, but it's not enough to stop the onslaught. He gives the order, fall back. He instructs his men to withdraw to a secondary, prepared position at the edge of the woods behind them. This is no panicked retreat. It is a controlled, fighting withdrawal. Murphy remains in the open, moving from position to position, firing his carbine to provide cover for his men as they pull back through the snow. He is the last one left, a solitary figure between his retreating company and the advancing German army. The burning M10 continues to belch smoke and fire, a funeral pyre on the frozen battlefield. Inside its hull, ammunition begins to cook off from the intense heat. The sharp, metallic crack of exploding rounds from within the vehicle adds to the cacophony of the battle. The German tanks, now unopposed, continue their slow, grinding advance. The infantry is closing in, fanning out to encircle the lone officer. For any rational soldier, this is the end. The position is lost. The only option is to save oneself. But Audie Murphy was not a rational soldier in that moment. He was a commander, and his men were still in danger. As German bullets snap past his head and kick up snow at his feet, Murphy's gaze falls upon the burning M10. Through the smoke, he sees the commander's .50 caliber machine gun atop the turret, seemingly intact. An idea forms, an act of such audacious courage it borders on madness. While the German infantry is focused on his retreating men, Murphy makes his move. He sprints towards the stricken tank destroyer. A piece of shrapnel from a nearby shell bursts tears into his leg, but he barely registers the pain. Adrenaline and pure determination propel him forward. He clambers onto the rear deck of the M10, the metal hot beneath his hands. He is now completely exposed, a solitary silhouette against the gray sky, standing atop a burning vehicle that could disintegrate in a massive explosion at any moment. He ignores the flames licking at the hull and the terrifying sound of ammunition cooking off inside. He swings himself behind the heavy Browning M12 machine gun, grips the spade handles, and pulls back the charging handle. The weapon is operational. He swivels the massive gun towards the nearest wave of German infantry, now less than 100 yards away. He presses the butterfly trigger. The .50 caliber machine gun erupts with a deafening roar, a sound far deeper and more terrifying than any rifle. A stream of heavy tracer rounds lashes out across the snow, a brilliant red line of death. The effect on the German infantry is instantaneous and horrific. The half-inch rounds tear through the lightly equipped soldiers, cutting them down in swathes. The attack, which had seemed unstoppable moments before, falters. The German soldiers dive for cover in ditches and shell craters, stunned by this sudden, ferocious onslaught from a single, impossible source. Murphy is a one-man army, a lone figure of defiance standing on a platform of fire, holding back a battalion. For the next hour, time seems to stand still on that frozen field. The world for Audie Murphy shrinks to the iron sights of his M12 Browning, the waves of camouflaged soldiers advancing towards him, and the burning steel beneath his feet. He is in a trance of focused violence, methodically traversing the gun back and forth, cutting down any German who dares to show themselves. He is not just firing wildly. He is a trained soldier, picking his targets, firing in controlled bursts to conserve ammunition and prevent the barrel from overheating. Simultaneously, he clutches the field telephone, his link to the American artillery batteries miles to the rear. With an eerie calm in his voice, he calls in fire missions, adjusting the coordinates with precision. "Drop at 50 yards and repeat," he calls, bringing the devastating shell fire closer and closer to his own position. The artillery observers on the other end of the line are incredulous, asking if he knows how close the barrage is. He famously replies that he knows, just keep the shells coming. The ground around the burning M10 erupts as American shells rain down, shredding German formations as they try to regroup for another assault. He is orchestrating a symphony of destruction, combining his own direct fire with the awesome power of indirect artillery. The German tanks are hesitant. Without their infantry support to protect their vulnerable flanks and rear from American bazooka teams, they are reluctant to close in on the woods. They fire sporadically at the M10, but Murphy seems to bear a charmed life, the shells either missing or striking the already disabled hull without effect. He ignores the ricochets and the shrapnel, his focus absolute. He is wounded, freezing, and standing on a ticking time bomb, yet he holds his ground, a single point of unyielding resistance against which the entire German attack breaks. The German assault, which began with such overwhelming force and confidence, is now in complete disarray. The battalion's momentum is shattered. Wave after wave of infantry had attempted to advance, only to be scythed down by the relentless fire from the lone machine gun. The ditches and shell craters are filled with the dead and wounded. The psychological effect on the surviving German soldiers is devastating. They are professional, battle-hardened troops, but they have never encountered anything like this. A single American soldier, seemingly immune to fire and fear, has single-handedly halted their entire attack. The German company commanders, seeing their units being decimated, are unable to press the assault. They cannot bypass Murphy, as his field of fire commands the entire approach to the woods. To advance is to be annihilated. The supporting German tanks, now deprived of their protective infantry screen, become increasingly vulnerable. They halt their advance, firing occasional shells but effectively neutralized as an assault force. The cost for the Germans has been catastrophic. In that single hour, Murphy is credited with killing or wounding over 50 enemy soldiers. The coordinated artillery he directed inflicted scores more casualties. The attack has not just been stopped, it has been broken. Faced with mounting losses and no hope of achieving their objective, the German battalion commander makes the only logical decision. The order is given to withdraw. The surviving German soldiers begin to pull back, melting back into the woods from which they came. The tanks reverse slowly, their cannons still pointed towards the burning M10, as if in disbelief. The roar of battle subsides, replaced by an eerie silence broken only by the crackle of the flames from the tank destroyer and the cries of the wounded scattered across the snow. Audie Murphy has done the impossible. He has held the line. As the last of the German forces disappear into the trees, Murphy finally ceases fire. The barrel of the M12 Browning is glowing. He is out of ammunition. The adrenaline that has sustained him for the past hour begins to fade, replaced by sheer exhaustion and the throbbing pain from his wounded leg. He carefully climbs down from the still smoldering hull of the tank destroyer. As his feet touch the ground, he stumbles, his leg almost giving way. He has just reached the relative safety of the ditch when the M10, its internal fires finally reaching the main fuel tanks or ammunition stores, erupts in a massive explosion, sending a pillar of fire and shrapnel into the sky. He has escaped just in time. Limping heavily, he makes his way back to his men's position in the woods. They stare at him in stunned silence and utter disbelief. They have just witnessed a miracle. Medics rush to help him, but he waves them away. He refuses medical evacuation. His job in his mind is not yet finished. Despite his wound and exhaustion, his tactical mind is still working. He knows the enemy is disorganized and retreating. Now is the time to strike back. He rallies his 18 surviving men. There is no soaring speech, just a simple command to follow him. Fueled by the astonishing example set by their lieutenant, the men of Company B fix their bayonets and rise from their positions. Incredibly, Audie Murphy leads them in a counterattack. They charge across the same field where he had made his stand, advancing on the retreating Germans. The enemy, caught completely by surprise and demoralized by their earlier failure, offers little organized resistance. Murphy and his men pursue them into the woods, inflicting further casualties and completely shattering what was left of the German assault force. This final, audacious act not only secured the defensive line, but turned a desperate defense into a decisive victory. The German plan to break through at Holtzwihr was finished, stopped cold by the actions of one determined lieutenant and the handful of men he inspired. The aftermath of the battle was a grim tableau. The snow-covered field in front of the woods was scarred by shell craters and littered with the debris of combat. The cost in human life was starkly evident. But thanks to Murphy's actions, the vast majority of those casualties were German. His company, which faced certain annihilation, had survived. He had saved them. News of his incredible stand spread like wildfire through the American lines. When his superiors heard the full account from eyewitnesses, they knew they had witnessed something far beyond the normal bounds of combat bravery. The recommendation was immediate and unanimous. Audie Murphy must be awarded the Medal of Honor, the United States' highest military decoration for valor. The official citation for the medal attempts to capture the events of that day in formal language, but the reality it describes is almost unbelievable. It speaks of how Second Lieutenant Murphy ordered his men to withdraw to a prepared position while he remained forward, how he mounted the burning tank destroyer, and with deliberate and calculated coolness, used its machine gun to repel the enemy. It details how, for an hour, he held off 6 tanks and waves of infantry, killing or wounding some 50 Germans. It notes he was wounded and exposed to direct fire, yet continued to direct artillery and fight until the enemy was routed. The citation concludes that he, by his indomitable courage and his refusal to give an inch of ground, saved his company and prevented a serious breakthrough by the enemy. The medal was formally presented to him on a parade ground in Salzburg, Austria, on June 2, 1945, by Lieutenant General Alexander Patch. The small Texan stood proudly as the blue-ribboned medal was placed around his neck, a tangible symbol of an intangible, almost superhuman, act of courage. The stand at Holtzwihr cemented Audie Murphy's status as a legend. By the end of the war, he was America's most decorated soldier, having received every combat award for valor the U.S. Army could bestow, as well as French and Belgian awards for heroism. His journey from a sharecropper's son in Texas to a national hero was the embodiment of the American dream. His wartime fame followed him home, leading to a successful career as a Hollywood actor. He starred in over 40 films, most famously playing himself in the 1955 movie adaptation of his autobiography, To Hell and Back. For millions of Americans, his on-screen persona became synonymous with the quiet, determined courage of the American GI. Yet, behind the fame and the medals lay the deep, invisible scars of war. Murphy suffered from what was then called battle fatigue, but is now known as post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. He struggled with insomnia, nightmares, and depression for the rest of his life. In an era when such conditions were poorly understood and often stigmatized, Murphy spoke openly about his struggles. He became a powerful and pioneering advocate for veterans' mental health, publicly calling for the U.S. government to give more consideration and study to the emotional impact of combat on veterans. His legacy, therefore, is twofold. He is remembered for his almost mythical bravery at Holtzwihr, an act that stands as one of the greatest feats of individual heroism in military history. But he should also be remembered for his post-war courage in confronting the hidden wounds of combat, helping to pave the way for a better understanding of the true cost of war. Audie Murphy's story is a powerful reminder that the greatest heroes are often ordinary people who, when faced with extraordinary circumstances, find a strength within themselves they never knew they possessed, changing the course of history in a single, desperate hour. Thank you for joining WWWO Heroic Tales. Through the stories of brave souls from World War II, we honor their memory and keep their legacy alive for history and generations to come.